Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen Prime Universe predicaments, elemental incursions, and a Boy Scout badge for cruelty. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Power number 4, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Dan Mora. So, this series wrapped up in a really nice way as I feel like this started strong and it ended strong. This feels like it was really kind of emulating one of the Marvel events from the 2000s, as I feel like everything that DC has been doing recently has kind of been like one thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. And I love the interconnectivity that we see between the individual books along with the event books, as there's ramifications. Things feel real, they feel like they have consequences. Mark Waid is, he knows how to craft a story. He's been doing this for years, and he's continuing to show that he is still one of the best comic book writers in the game right now. Dan Mora's artwork here is really bold and exciting, and we kind of come to expect that from him. However, I feel like the color choices in this book are really, really fantastic. They really make everything pop right off the page. They play so well with Dan Mora's artwork and some of the choices that he makes, and it's really exciting to see some of those action set pieces as they really pop off the page with some of those bright, bold color choices. Again, this was a really fun and exciting event. I love the way that they kind of put the bow on it, and I think that this is going to be an exciting jumping on point for a lot of readers, as the end of this really kind of leads right into some fun and exciting things coming down the path. Next up, let's talk Batman 153, written by Chip Zdarsky with artwork by Jorge Jimenez. So this is a great jumping on point issue, as everything that's kind of happened with an absolute power and everything that happened with failsafe and the multiversal craziness, that's all been done now. That's put to the side. This is seeing Bruce in a completely new landscape. This is seeing Batman in a completely new landscape, as Gotham is tentatively peaceful here, and Bruce is now kind of doing philanthropy work here as opposed to kind of just Wayne Tech and kind of living that playboy rich lifestyle. It's a cool kind of flip to what we're normally seeing within Batman. However, I feel like there are familiar tropes within this issue, as we're introduced to a character that seems very reminiscent to someone that we had been introduced to within Tynan's run on the Batman book. This could play out a little bit differently, though it's definitely not going so heavy handed with the technological aspects like it did in Tynan's run, but it feels very familiar. Jorge Jimenez, what more can I say about his artwork? When it's here within the pages of Batman, it's bold, it's exciting, it's kinetic, and we get all of those ideas, specifically when Bruce dons the cowl and he kind of, starts, making with the action. So it was an effective issue. It kind of plays with a lot of ideas that we've seen. However, it feels fresh. It feels fun. It feels like this is kind of the Batman that I want. Let's keep it grounded. Let's kind of keep it this way rather than getting too big and too grandiose here. This is the Batman I want to see moving forward. All right, let's talk Cruel Universe number 3, the anthology horror series with a variety of artists and writers. I had been a champion of the last couple issues, and I gotta say, this issue totally let me down. Nothing really hit for me in any aspect of any storyline in here. The stories usually kind of have like a hook, some kind of fun little twist ending, or they have some kind of like really gruesome aspect where, I don't know, someone gets their comeuppance, and nothing really hits effectively in the pages of this. And that speaks for the artwork too. The artwork, I feel like there's some kind of boldness that's missing. There's some kind of exciting notion that just isn't kind of being driven home within these pages. Some of the previous issues had that. This one feels like it just, I don't know, it hits a little flat. There are some ideas that I feel like the storylines, like they just weren't even paced. There was one storyline that spent way too many pages telling the story that they were trying to tell. Some of them just didn't get any time to breathe whatsoever. And overall, I don't know. It's an anthology, so I get it, but also nothing had time to breathe on this one. So I don't know. Overall, Cruel Universe wasn't really all that effective for me. Next up, let's talk Daredevil number 14, written by Saladin Ahmed with artwork by Luigi Zagaria. Again, this is kind of an uneven mess of a story here, as Some of the things I actually really like about this issue, where, Matt kind of has his come to Jesus moment. It's kind of one of his character archetypes we know and love. He understands some of the missteps that he's taken. He tries to own up to his mistakes, and that's all well and good. We expect that, and it was kind of one of the nice things about this issue. However, it felt a bit weird and it felt a little bit unearned, as I don't know what necessarily triggered him to make that change. It just kind of happened because we expected it to happen. Speaking of uneven, the artwork. The artwork, 90% of this issue was actually really good. I liked that it was comic booky. I liked that it kind of, leaned into those classic Casada feelings from when he was on the book in the late 90s, early 2000s. But there were aspects of this where it completely flipped. Like, the character model for Matt changed from one page to the next, and it got him looking really cartoony in a really jarring way. So, I don't know. I guess that's kind of just a telling point here for the series and this issue as a whole. Uneven and a little bit of a mess. All right, let's talk the DC All In Special #1, written by Joshua Williamson and Scott Snyder, with artwork by Dan Mora and Wes Craig. This was a super effective, not only epilogue to what we got with Absolute Power, but a prologue to what we're going to be getting for the Absolutes section of the DC universe. I kind of had a lot of fun with this, actually, and I was completely surprised. The initial half of this issue is crafted, primarily by Joshua Williamson, and I feel like it sets the Justice League up in a really fun and exciting way. I like that they're kind of back together, and it's almost kind of akin to like the Avengers when Jonathan Hickman was writing it. They realized, hey, it can't just be this subset of characters, and it can't even just be this, this set of characters. We have to get everyone together to solve the right problems at the right times that have the right powers. I love that aspect. We have so many superheroes, and it's kind of always one of those complaints we have as comic book readers, is that, like, well, why wasn't Green Lantern just there to solve this issue? Well, they're kind of putting that into play right now, and I kind of love that. The second half of this book, though, is all about the absolute universe, and we spend a lot of time with Darkseid, and we spend a lot of time on Apocalypse. And I gotta say, when we're dealing with creations that came right out of Jack Kirby's mind and were put on paper from his pencil, I love that they chose Wes Craig as the artist to convey that, because all of those Kirbyisms are really put at the forefront here. I love the fact that he's crafting these impossible Kirby mechanics in the background, and he's drawing these characters very much akin to how Kirby's, I don't know, his character models worked and how his style was. Absolutely fantastic artistic choice there. We start to see kind of the notion of how the absolute universe comes to be, and maybe how some of the things that we know these characters are going to be dealing with that are different than in the Prime universe are. And I don't know, it's a really bold and exciting way to kind of set things up. If the whole reason for this issue was to get me excited for DC proper and DC Absolute, you did the trick. We have another Ghost Machine book, so let's talk Hyde Street #1, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Ivan Reis. I'm going to start with Ivan Reis here because I gotta say, his hyper detailed, hyper rendered artwork just works so well within these pages. It is really breathtaking to look at the amount of detail that he puts on a page. Every shadow is refined. Every plume of smoke that comes off of a cigarette just swirls around the entirety of a room here. It is awesome. His character models look totally clean. The characters look like, just, I don't know, exciting, right? Nothing feels out of place. The boy character, the Boy Scout in this, looks as devious as you would expect him to, and the X-ray goggles that a character wears in this are just as mesmerizing as you would expect them to be. This is kind of a horror imprint within the greater universes that Ghost Machine is building. And when we're talking about horror, as far as the writing aspects, I can't say that we're working with anything that's new and bold, right? There's nothing that is like getting pushed forward that we haven't seen before, but that's kind of okay, because we're dealing with the familiar tropes of bad people dealing with the consequences of doing bad things, and secrets coming to light, and then, people having to deal with that, right? In gruesome, bloody ways. It was a really good introductory issue. It leaves enough to get you excited about the characters that we're dealing with, which in this case really feel like the bad guys. But not only that, but it leaves enough of a cliffhanger at the end to show we're not just dealing with these two characters that we're introduced to. There's a greater universe that we're going to be building out from, and there's a lot of characters that we could be spending time with. And the previous Ghost Machine books were any indication, those characters are probably going to be pretty awesome because each book has built upon itself and shown us more and more that's been even more enticing. Next up, let's talk Immortal Thor number 16, written by Al Ewing with artwork by Jan Bazaldua. Al Ewing is trying to write a classic feeling comic book, something that came right out of the 60s and 70s with Thor. And I get the idea that he's going for, and I'm kind of along for the ride for parts of this, but I gotta say, this issue was totally uneven. And it's kind of been the thing that I've said about the whole series. The whole series has been uneven, as I feel like there's been a lot of fun issues. Been a lot of humdrum issues here too. We're just riding that roller coaster, and it keeps going up and down and up and down. And at this point, I don't know if I'm along for the ride anymore. I want to understand what the heck Al Ewing is going after within this series, as we still don't really know who the main antagonist is, and we don't know the purpose behind what Thor is trying to accomplish here. There's small little, things that are happening here. There's subsets of adventurous things that are happening, but there's no overarching story that I totally get. We're introduced to maybe mysteries of it through what Loki had said in previous issues, but nothing has felt like we're on that same path for long periods of time, as everything just kind of gets, here's an issue and it's gone. Here's an issue and it's gone. I don't know. This has been a difficult series to review. It's been a difficult issue to review, as I feel like the issue itself starts off super strong with Thor discussing these same aspects with Sif and kind of going through all of the things that have been happening recently. But then he goes down to Midgard and he's fighting classic villains, and that should be cool and it should be exciting, but I don't know, it just fell flat and it didn't feel exciting or bold, mostly because I don't know what the heck this is leading to. So overall, Immortal Thor has been run of the mill, kind of the same thing that I've been saying over and over. All right, let's talk Plastic Man No More number 2, written by Christopher Cantwell with artwork by Jacob Edgar. All of my critique on issue number 1, how I said that it felt uneven, nope, none of that comes into play with issue number 2, as I feel like everything fits together so wonderfully. We still get the jokey aspects of our main character, but we get the heartbreak and we get kind of the depression that he feels, and we get the stakes that he's going after, as he knows that he is truly falling apart himself, and he understands that this might be the same thing that ends up happening to his son. I love that everything is starting to fit together, just like the puzzle pieces here, as those things play off of each other so much more effectively in this issue than they did in the previous one. We kind of see how the Justice League kind of pushes him to the side and he's an afterthought. We see how he's kind of hasn't done right by his family and they push him aside, rightfully so at this point. But we kind of get to get in the head of, Plastic Man a little bit more and understand what's driving him. The artwork on this is absolutely pitch perfect, though, as this is kind of a body horror type of series, as Plastic Man truly is, again, falling apart. He can't retain his plastic body anymore, to the point where he's truly having to hold himself together in a bag. And we get to see some things in this issue that artistically are just so grotesque and exciting and colorful and yet totally gross. It's hitting all of those fun things perfectly, and it's really making this, the perfect Black Label type of story to tell, as it gets really weird and nasty in a way that maybe you wouldn't be able to tell in an in continuity book. And let's be honest, who's going to pick up an in continuity Plastic Man book? It's not going to be all that much. So again, this is kind of the perfect landscape, the perfect writer to take on the notions of this fun yet depressing story, and again, the perfect artwork to really show all these things. So Plastic Man No More number 2 was like super effective. All right, let's talk Redcoat number 6, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Brian Hitch. This is kind of like the culmination of what feels like the first arc of this story that we're in here with Simon Pure, our main character. And I gotta say, it was as fun as it was predictable. And I don't mean that as a critique, as these sometimes these things get formulaic, but as long as you're in it for a good time, this is going to be a really fun issue for you. Simon Pure starts off as the hard luck hero. He doesn't really kind of want to go into these things. He's looking out for himself, and being an immortal, he spent a lot of time looking out for himself. But now he's thrown into kind of this adventurous thing where he not only has to make sure that he can regain and retain his immortality, but he also has to make sure that the friends that are along for the ride with him now are safe and sound. And sometimes immortality and the safety of his friends don't line up perfectly. I love that Benedict Arnold has been kind of played as the antagonist in this series, as of course it makes sense. Why wouldn't it make sense? They're playing with these fun ideas of US history in such a bold and fantastic way. And I feel like with the cliffhanger of this issue and how this character will continue down the path, I think it's going to be really fun to explore how he has impacted things moving forward, as we still have a lot of US history to kind of track with our main character. So overall, Redcoat, I can't say it's been the best Ghost Machine book, but I can definitely say for me, it's been the most fun. And with a new solo ongoing, let's talk Storm number 1, written by Mirawa Ayodele with artwork by Lucas Wernick. This book is all about kind of like potential, right? It's the potential of the character that we're dealing with Storm having left the X-Men, having obviously left Krakoa and Arakko, and has rejoined as a member of the Avengers, but now more so than anything as a US representative. She's trying to really use her mutantdom as a way, as a tentpole to like kind of really show how mutants can be of the greater good as they're reintroducing themselves within society. And that's a big thing to deal with. And I think the writer is dealing with the ideas in a really good way. However, I feel like the narration and the dialogue kind of, I don't know, felt a little bit clunky within this issue. Things didn't hit the way that they should be. It was like a great idea and a kind of a middle of the road execution. Lucas Wernock as well is kind of working within the confines of the story here, and I feel like he was maybe set up a little bit to follow that same pattern of middle of the road, as some of the things he's tasked with drawing could be fun and exciting, albeit the action set piece within this kind of details Storm having to go within this town and find out why these aftershocks of nuclear energy are coming out of a power plant. And the notion of that, it could work, but we're dealing with timed aftershocks, and that's a hard thing to convey, and it's a hard thing to convey the consequences and the risk that our characters are in. It's done, but again, is it like super exciting? I don't know about that. Overall, it was kind of an uneven issue. It was an introductory issue, though, so there's a lot to still explore with this character. And even with all that I've said here, what I will say, the pinpoint on this is that the cliffhanger of this issue really kind of paints an extraordinarily exciting idea for our main character, as it's something that I feel like hasn't been explored yet, and it's something that truly could be worthwhile and truly adventurous. I'm really, really excited for that. So, Storm number 1, give it a read. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments down below. Next up, let's talk Ultimate Black Panther number 9, written by Brian Edward Hill with artwork by Stefano Caselli. Best thing about this issue is the best part about this series as a whole. The pacing of everything is perfect. We don't get a lot of things that happen in this issue, but what does happen is really impactful. We get to spend time with both Killmonger and Storm, and then also a little bit of time with T'Challa and Moon Knight as well. The Killmonger and Storm portion of the story, I feel like, is probably the most exciting, as there's a lot of great dialogue that happens here, where there's a lot of back and forth with these characters. And we kind of know Killmonger in a more villainous role, and we know Storm in a more heroic role. And I love the way that they're flipping those a little bit, as they kind of have a little bit of back and forth as to whether or not they should even be helping T'Challa, if they have a horse in this race, right? There's no reason to really trust him, and there's no reason for them to even kind of band together with him. What is the reason behind that? except if you're going to do it for altruistic reasons, heroic reasons. So it's kind of fun that they're playing with those ideas. And then T'Challa, he's also still dealing with the idea of the fact that he is a king to the people of Wakanda, but is having those resources to benefit Wakanda going to also be benefiting the greater good of Africa as a whole and the people that truly need their help. Moon Knight's playing with those notions as well, and he's definitely manipulating the greater populace because of that idea. So T'Challa's really trying to play a game of chess here on how to deal with that without just, kind of going full force, superhero action, straightforward into it and trying to just fight Moon Knight. Fighting isn't the answer in this. He knows that he has to be the king before he is Black Panther. So really fun, exciting issue. Again, really light on dialogue, really light on narration, but the things that happen here are keeping it fun and exciting. And it's the reason that this is probably the most effective of the Ultimate books here, is that it's playing with ideas that are, I don't know, things that could impact the entirety of the universe as opposed to just the pages of this book. And with our runner-up pick of the week, let's talk Conan Battle of the Blackstone #2, written by Jim Zub with artwork by Jonas Scharf. So I kind of love the fact that we're dealing with a lot of different Robert E. Howard characters within the pages of this book, as Jonas has to be having a lot of fun as he's crafting different characters and different landscapes and different time frames, and he's doing so masterfully. It's I don't know. It's a lot of fun to behold here as he's dealing with the Hyborian age with a couple characters, and he's dealing with the early 1900s, the 1800s. He's dealing with Chicago. He's dealing with France, and like you're getting all of these within the same page sometime. And he's also not only that, but like he's getting to craft some of the Lovecraftian magic and creatures that come into play within the pages of this book, and he's doing so in really fun and exciting ways here. The magic pops off the page with bright, bold colors. The monsters look appropriately monstrous. And all of these characters really get a chance to shine within this book. Jim Zub is crafting it in a way that is not just a crossover event, as we kind of come to know from, Marvel and DC properties. It is a crossover event. We're getting a lot of these characters together, but he's doing so in a way that really shows you that this is not just a crossover. There are consequences, and these characters truly are in danger. This issue presents that perfectly. All in all, the Battle of the Blackstone has been a lot of fun so far, and we're not even, to the point where we know how this is going to play out yet. So that's the even more exciting part. There's going to be ramifications that continue down the path that we're on right now within the pages of this book, but the even more exciting aspect is that this is going to play a part within the greater mythos of Conan itself. This is probably going to have implications in Conan the Barbarian in those pages, and who knows what other kind of properties might come from this particular crossover event right now. So again, fun and exciting things that are being played with here, classic feeling Conan stories, but also playing with different aspects here. Totally great event here. I'm totally excited to continue reading this. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk Skin Police #1, written by Jordan Thomas with artwork by Daniel Gates. This one came out of left field for me, but I'm so glad that I took the time to read this because, man, it just hits on so many fun and exciting aspects. If you're a fan of Blade Runner, you might like this. If you're a fan of Altered Carbon, you're probably going to like this. If you read Transmetropolitan, there's a good chance you're going to like this. The Transmetropolitan comparison, let's start there, as I feel like the artwork is really reminiscent of a couple different artists, one being Derek Robertson, the artist on Transmetropolitan, the other being Jeff Darrow, as it is a very clean, detailed experience that you're getting with Daniel's artwork. It's kind of lean, it can lean within the grotesque, as the notion of this book is all about clones and the cloning process being illegal, but some people on the black market continuing to make these clones, and they can kind of go crazy and sometimes they go pop. So it's really fun to see all those things play out here. This is a really good introductory issue that puts you right in the landscape, explains everything in an effective way that's not overly exposition-y, and kind of shows you who your main players are and what their motivations might be. There's a lot of paranoia that gets played into this with this book, as the clones don't even necessarily know that they are clones. And that means that some of the people are really true people that may be going through symptoms here and not even realize that they're not clones, but they deal with the ramifications of that as well. A lot of mystery, a lot of fun action in this. Totally, I don't know, exciting, effective first issue. Again, took me totally by surprise, but if you're kind of into that cyberpunk, futuristic, Blade Runner-y kind of, I don't know, storyline, this one really might hit for you. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.